Hi, and welcome to Old Time Knowledge. Well, in today's episode, I'm going to be pulling in some information from another one of my passions apart from cooking, which is writing. Some of you may not know this, but I also have a historical fiction book series called the Adam Fletcher Adventure Series. It takes place in the 1760s here on the coast of North Carolina, and I have done a ton of research over the years because I'm a genealogy nerd and I'm a history nerd, and I just love it. I remembered hearing about fruit and nut cakes being popular in the colonial era. I hadn't thought a whole lot about its connection to the fruit cakes that have been popular in America in the last, say, 100 years or so. I wasn't sure if it was the same thing that was continuous or if it changed or what. One thing I did know, though, was that fruitcakes aren't popular like they were a long time ago. And I wondered, first of all, what is it that made them such a beloved cake? And then secondly, why did they fall out of favor? Well, I'm still not totally clear on why they fell out of favor. But one thing I have learned is that this is probably a cake that just evolved as other recipes did. Apparently, fruitcakes have been popular going back millennia. The ancient Romans had a form of a fruit cake, which involved dried fruits and nuts or seeds and some sort of binding agent, flour type agent, and liquor. And all of those things together, they would have little cakes. And there have been similar cakes in different civilizations down through time. In the colonial era, particularly in England, I did some research and found that they called it a plum cake. A good example would be found in, this is a really cool little book. If you don't have this, I recommend it. This is an inexpensive book, and I'm going to link to it in the description below. This is a facsimile edition, which means it's the total copy of Amelia Simmons' very well-known 1796 cookbook called American Cookery. This is a later version of this is a later cookbook. Another early cookbook was Hannah Glasse, and this is another one I'm going to link below. Hannah Glasse had a cookbook called, here's the title page, The Art of Cookery Made Plain and Easy, which far exceeds anything of the kind yet published. So in these cookbooks from this era, if you look back in the recipe section for desserts and cakes and things of that nature, you'll find a recipe. This is the Amelia Simmons cookbook for a plum cake. And a plum cake was what we know of today as a fruit cake. The ingredients are a little different, but just listen to these and see if you can catch the similarities. Mix 1 pound currants, 1 dram nutmeg, mace and cinnamon each, a little salt, 1 pound of citron, orange peel candied, and almonds bleached, 6 pounds of flour. Yes, they used a lot of flour back then. And eggs, you'll see. 6 pounds of flour, well dried. Beat 21 eggs and add with 1 quart new ale yeast, ½ pint wine, 3½ pints of cream, and raisins. So the new ale yeast would be the leavening. They did not have baking soda and baking powder in the colonial era. In fact, those things aren't much more than 100 years old. They would use yeast as a leavening, but then they would also use eggs and butter and whip that up really good to create a lift to the cakes. So that plum cake would have been something that had been brought over to the colonies from England, and it was a very popular thing. There were different versions of these cakes that had featured fruit and nuts and things of that nature. The Hannah Glasse cookbook mentions one called a pretty cake, and it has very similar ingredients. I'll include this description as well below. It's fun to look at these old cookbooks because then you can see how things used to be made a long time ago and how they would make use of the ingredients that they had. And then think about how we take them forward to today and we do things a little bit differently. But the point is, the fruitcake has been a traditional American and a traditional English Christmas dessert going back centuries. And then at some point it fell out of favor. I did a little bit of research about why it might have fallen out of favor, and I'm not totally convinced about all of this, but apparently it was likely, it might have been the mass production of the dessert. It might have been the fact that it became so common that it wasn't a special gift anymore. The fruitcake that I'm going to be making today in this video, well, I've already made it. I'm recording the introduction after I've made it. But the fruitcake I'm making in this is not cheap. The brandy I used in it is a good brandy. The dried fruit adds up. It's a few dollars for each different kind of fruit, and you're supposed to use 2.5 pounds of dried fruit in the cake. I'm using dried pineapple, dried cherries, apricots, dates, and golden raisins. Plus, I'm using pecans from my grandfather's farm. They didn't cost me anything, but if you had to buy them, that would be another expense. If you're going to use liquor, you're going to want to use a good quality liquor, because if you're putting this much into your other ingredients, don't skimp on the liquor. I'm not saying buy top shelf, but you're going to want to buy something that's not a bottom shelf liquor, something that actually has a flavor you like. Good options would be brandy. Brandy is apparently the traditional one for fruitcakes. Rum would be another one. I don't know how whiskey would work. I don't even know if I've drank whiskey, so I'm not even sure really how that tastes. I might have tried it once, but something tells me that one might not be as good. But what do I know? In any case, do your research about what kind of liquor, if any, you use with a fruitcake. But if you don't want to use a liquor, you don't have to use a liquor. If you can rehydrate your fruit with just water, and then once you've baked your cake or cakes, which I'll get to in just a minute, you can coat them with a simple syrup, or you can flavor your simple syrup and use that to keep them moist. So what is the liquid for after your cake is baked? The liquor would have been used to preserve the cake. A fruit cake could be preserved for a very long time with liquor because it keeps out bacteria. Think about how we use rubbing alcohol or hand sanitizer. The main ingredient of that is alcohol to kill germs. So liquor in a fruit cake has a similar function as far as keeping bacteria from setting in and breaking it down and making it go to waste. Additionally, though, it does add to the flavor. But you age the fruitcake. You're not going to make a fruitcake, put liquor on it, and then serve it that same day or even the next day. They say really at a minimum you should let it age for about a month, because what happens is the flavor mellows. It doesn't have that sharp alcohol flavor. It'll be more mellow. It'll meld with the flavors that's in the cake, and it'll be much better. If you don't want to use the liquor, you don't have to. We don't have to preserve things as long now as they might have a long time ago. I've heard in the colonial era and in times past, they would actually make a fruitcake this year and save it for a year and then serve it Christmas or after the new year, a year later as a good luck. I read about a family that has been taking care of a fruitcake for over 137 years, which blows my mind. They're not eating it at this point, but the cake would actually still be fine to eat if they wanted to, but it's just been a tradition in the family to take care of it every year and to keep adding liquor to it to preserve it. It's pretty wild. So they can last a really long time. But of course, if you're just going to use a simple syrup, if you don't want to use any alcohol, you don't have to use alcohol. You're just not going to be able to preserve it as long. Let's see, some other things that I wanted to get to. Okay, the size of your fruitcake. The recipe that I'm making will make 2 like 9 by 5 inch loaves, or you can make any combination of a 9 by 5 inch loaf and smaller cakes. I'm using large muffin tins for 6 little cakes, and then I'll have 1 loaf. My plan is to have the loaf here for our family for Christmas, and then the smaller cakes I'll be able to give as gifts. And now that I've made this and it smells as good as it does and the batter tastes as good as it does, I am sold. This definitely smells like Christmas. It tastes like Christmas. I feel like this has been missing my whole life. My parents grew up with fruitcake. I don't know why my grandparents didn't keep making them and why I didn't have them. Maybe they had them when I was little and I just didn't want to eat it because it didn't look pretty. Fruitcake doesn't look pretty to little kids. Or maybe they just got bored with them. Who knows? It's anybody's guess. apparently Johnny Carson, if any of you know who Johnny Carson is, Johnny Carson joked in one episode of The Tonight Show about the fact that nobody wants fruitcake at Christmas. It's the one thing that everybody gives as a gift and everybody receives as a gift. And what we're really all doing is just passing around the same fruitcake from house to house year after year. So I didn't tell that right, but you get the point. The point is, I think it had become kind of a joke. They were being mass produced. Those are the ones you see in the store. Speaking of which, I alluded to this in another video, but those little rectangular fruitcakes you see in the store are by Claxton's. You can buy those online, and I didn't know that. I've always thought it was just a thing that they had at our local southern grocery stores. They don't look very good though, y'all. I've never had one, and unfortunately I couldn't taste one because they have walnuts in them, and I'm allergic to walnuts. But my dad and my mom both say that they are really, really good. So I'm going to link to that in the description below also in case you wanted to buy one of those fruitcakes to try. But all those different things probably came together and made fruitcake sort of fall out of popularity, except for with limited families that have just maintained the tradition out of it being tradition. But you know what? Maybe this video will bring it back. Maybe this video will make fruitcakes popular again. Because maybe once you see all that goes into this, you're going to be curious and you're going to want to make this yourself. I can just tell you, really the flavor of the batter is amazing. Batter will tell you something. I mean, I know it's got raw eggs in it. I don't care. I'm going to try batter before I bake a cake. The batter is amazing. The smell is amazing. I'm telling you, this is like a piece of Christmas that has been missing my whole life. So rather than me just going on and on, I'm going to get started making the cake. I also want to link to this in the description below. This is the first book in the book series that I was telling you about that I write, the Adam Fletcher Adventure series, The Smuggler's Gambit. This has well over 500 reviews on Amazon. It's been popular all over the world. It's available on iTunes. It's available for Nook. It's available on Google Play. I don't talk about fruitcake in this book, but there is a Christmas book. This book number 6 is a Christmas book, and I'm working on book 7 now. But this video, I'm hoping to sort of cross over so that both audiences, both my readers and my old time knowledge viewers, can enjoy some of this information, since I'm touching on the colonial part, but I'm also touching on the straight up recipe for a Christmas dessert. So without further ado, let's get to it. All right, let me just go over these ingredients and then we'll get started putting this cake together. This cake has a lot of ingredients, y'all. First of all, I need to point out the dried fruit that I've had soaking in brandy for the last week. You don't have to soak it for a full week, but I went ahead and soaked it for a full week. Just to get the flavors really mixed in there good of the brandy. And in that bowl of dried fruit is golden raisins, apricots, pineapples, dates, cherries, and I think that's it. But it is a nice combination of different dried fruits. You can use your favorite dried fruits. If you want to use some different ones, you certainly can do that. But in this case, I chose the ones that I thought were going to work best for my cake. So in addition, I have 16 tablespoons of butter. This is one of those 1 pound blocks from Sam's Club that I had cut in half. And I have the other half in the refrigerator for more baking. So that's 16 tablespoons of butter. There is 2 cups of dark brown sugar packed. There's a teaspoon of salt. There's a teaspoon of baking powder. Over here we have the spices. There's a teaspoon of cinnamon, a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and a 1/4 teaspoon of allspice. There are 4 eggs at room temperature. There is a 1/4 cup of dark corn syrup, 2 cups of crushed pecans that have been toasted, a 1/2 cup of water, and I'm going to be adding 3 cups of flour when it's time. So let me just go ahead and get started mixing all of this up. I'm going to speed things up a little bit. Here I am adding 16 tablespoons of butter and the 2 cups of dark brown sugar. I'm going to get that mixed up really good. It was kind of coarse and it took a little while to blend up, but it'll come together. Next, I'm going to add the 1/4 cup of dark brown syrup. Get that mixed in with 4 eggs, room temperature eggs. Mix that up really well. Now it's time to add in the flour. We're going to be adding in 3 cups of flour. And then I'm going to be tossing in the teaspoon of salt and the teaspoon of baking powder and the spices, getting those all mixed in. And in hindsight, I should have gone ahead and put in the 1/2 cup of water earlier, but I forgot, but I'm going to get it added in here in just a second and get it mixed in. There it is. Get that mixed in real good. All right, I'm going to go ahead and add in those pecans and get them mixed in, but I'm going to do this with a spoon. I think it's just easier. Also, the fruit that I've had soaking. Just as a reminder, that fruit is apricots, dates, golden raisins, pineapple, and cherries. I had soaked them in brandy, and now they're added into the batter. This is important. These muffin tins and the loaf pan back there are coated in butter. You want a lot of butter coating your pans before you bake this. I've read people complain when they make fruitcake about it sticking to the pan. But if you use plenty of butter, you won't have that problem. I mean, you can use something else to grease your pans with. I just like to use butter because I'm all about some butter and all kinds of things. All right, now let's get these dishes filled up with the batter and get them ready to bake. This is a really thick batter. And it's really not going to rise a whole lot. So wherever you put it, you don't have to worry about it just really coming out of your pan. You want to have a little bit of space, but it's not going to be too bad. Okay, we're going to pop it in the oven at 300 degrees. Now, the muffin tin size is going to bake for about an hour. And in my case, it was about an hour and 10 minutes. But the loaf pan needs to go closer to 2 hours. You're just going to bake them in a 300-degree oven, and then you're going to check after the time for the smaller cakes or the larger cakes, or just any time. You can just check them with a toothpick like you would any cake. And as soon as it comes out clean, then you know it's done. About an hour, not quite an hour after the smaller fruitcakes were done, the loaf was done. I turned it upside down just because I think I want to have it that way. It'll be pretty. But now I'm getting ready to brush them with some brandy that I have added about a teaspoon of vanilla to. And then I'm going to be wrapping them in cheesecloth and giving that a little bit of a dousing of brandy, and then wrapping everything up in plastic wrap. I've not done this before, so this is going to be fun, just figuring this out. Alrighty, so now that I have these fruitcakes all wrapped up in the soaked cheesecloth and the saran wrap, I've got them in these gallon-sized Ziploc bags to keep them until Christmas. It is November 1st, and I definitely want these to be nice and and moist and fresh for Christmas. All the instructions I've read about fruitcakes say you can continue brushing the fruitcakes with more brandy or more simple syrup if you're not using alcohol, or more whatever liquor you use, rum, whatever you choose. You can continue brushing your fruitcakes with that once a week until Christmas. You definitely want it to age, if you're using liquor, a minimum of a month. Otherwise, you can serve it fresh if you're just going to cook a fruitcake and serve it at Christmas time. It's probably not going to be as moist as these that have absorbed all of the liquid. You can make them a week ahead of time and serve them with the simple syrup and let them soak up the simple syrup, and then that would work as well. But hopefully you can see the loaf right here. And I have 6 of these smaller loaves, which I'll be able to give as gifts. I'll wrap them. I'll find a nice way to wrap them before Christmas time. I'm not going to give them like this, and I'm not going to leave them in the cheesecloth either. But I'm really looking forward to it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I really, really hope you'll try this. I used pecans. You can make this and use a different nut. If you want, you can leave out the nuts. It is a traditional part, but you can leave out the nuts if you want. You can choose which fruits you want to use. You can exchange the water in the recipe for apple juice or cranberry juice. I'm going to link to that original recipe that I used in the description below so that you can look at that and see which items you might want to swap out. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, you know what to do. Give it a thumbs up. If you have not yet subscribed, please subscribe to this channel. Just do it. Do it right now. If you're watching this on your laptop, hit the subscribe button. Hit that little notification bell if you want to be notified every time a video is uploaded. If you're watching it on your TV with the YouTube app, then just hit probably, well, on the Roku, I know you hit down, and then you can go to the channel and you can subscribe. Whatever you have to do, subscribe, because there's going to be more Christmas recipes coming up. There's going to be more all kinds of delicious things coming up. I'm going to be doing some other activities that don't have anything to do with recipes, but it's all going to be in the vein of traditional life ways and old style skills and things like that. So I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching. See you again soon.